So let's start. Money. That is something we use on a daily basis, something we just take for granted. It's like the water for a fish. We seldom think about where does money actually come from. But last year, this has started to change. New innovative types of digital monies, such as cryptocurrencies and digital state money, have begun to challenge the old money issued by private banks. When the winds of change blow, old habits and ideas usually have to be reconsidered. Questions about what money really is and who should be given the power to create new money and be the first user of it now suddenly are debated more frequently all over the world. So this is very exciting times. And to help us understand the development, we have invited Professor Joseph Huber, who have just published a brand new book in this subject, The Monetary Turning Point. And in this book, Joseph writes that in modern monetarized and financialized societies, being in control of money, its creation, first uses, and its ongoing allocation thereafter, means wielding superior power, second only to legal command power. So what does this mean? What kind of power is this? Which are the actors competing for taking this power? And how should we understand this ongoing struggle? Will it be intensified the coming years? And who is likely to win? And hopefully, Huber will give us all the answers here today. Who is Joseph Huber? So, Joseph is a leading researcher, has made many influential contributions to recent monetary system analysis and reform. Just to take three examples. So, first, this book, Creating New Money from 2000, which was one of the cornerstones for the modern monetary reform movement. Then we also have the Sovereign Money from 2017. That's one of my favorites. Now his new book, The Monetary Turning Point. And of course, he has also published a lot of papers, reports, etc. in this subject. Between 1992 and 2012, Huber was the chair of economic and environmental sociology at Martin Luther University of Halle-Wittenberg in Germany. And he's also co-founder of Monetative in Berlin in 2009. And that was actually one of the first monetary reform initiatives. The monetary reform movement eventually spread all over the world to become the international movement for monetary reform. And here we have some examples of it. This movement now exists in 29 countries. Today's webinar is a cooperation between some of these organizations. And my name is Samuel, and I'm from the Swedish branch called Positiva Pengar, up here in the left corner. And with us here today, we also have Lucille from Alliance for Just Money in the US. And she will help us with a discussion, with questions from the audience, etc. And also Ryan, that will help us with technical stuff with Zoom. So what is happening now? First, Joseph will have a presentation. And after that, I will have a short interview with Joseph. And finally, we will have time for questions from the audience. And in the first two parts, you all will be muted. So all of you that has entered here are now muted. And in the third part, you will be able to raise your Zoom hand and unmute yourself, and also to write in the chat to everyone to ask questions and discuss things. But this will be closed during the first two parts. So with that said, a warm welcome to all of you. Nice to see so many of you here today. And of course, a warm welcome to Joseph Huber. So yeah, the stage is yours here. I stop my sharing. You can take over.
Okay. Thank you very much, Samuel, for doing the introduction and for introducing me. And also from my side, I would like to say hello to everyone participating here. And me too. I'm actually very pleased that there is so much interest in that webinar we are going to have now. So now let me try to activate the presentation, the PowerPoint I have prepared. So here it is. Can you see?
Yes, we do.
Yes, and you can hear me apparently.
Yes.
So now,
and if people don't know, you can slide if you want to see Joseph bigger, you can slide it to the right or left as you want.
Yes, okay. And now, now you see that it doesn't work. Now, here it goes.
Yep.
So what you see here, these are two issue attention cycles. And the left one, that's the cycle of full sovereign money reform, which includes putting an end to bank money literally overnight. And that cycle lasted until around 2018. And in my opinion, that ended with the Swiss vote on introducing a sovereign money system in Switzerland. And since then, the second on the right, the other issue cycle was strongly on the rise, and that's the issue cycle of central bank digital currency, for short CBDC. I think in my understanding, it can also be referred to as sovereign digital currency if issued by a central bank under state law that acts as the respective national monetary authority. And in this sense, I think that the introduction of CBDC can also be seen as a door opener for gradual monetary reform. By way of introducing CBDC step by step, side by side with continued bank money, and over time superseding bank money and becoming the dominant type of money. I still think that a full sovereign money reform it can be possible, it's feasible, it could be done, but in actual fact, politically not at all. There is no way. There are too many, too many mighty vested interests, too many outdated paradigms ruling the heads, and too many die-hard old habits. So by contrast, gradual sovereign money reform in perspective by introducing CBDC is what is actually coming and what is on its way. As I have to say, when looking into the history of money in modern times, when looking at the succession of different types of money as shown here from bottom to top, the gradual approach appears to be very plausible. And so far we have had, in the history of money in modern times, we have had 3 monetary turning points. That was the transition towards paper money, private banknotes and treasury cash bills. That was unregulated at the time, followed thereafter in the 19th century by the central bank note monopoly that was based on the gold standard. The problem with that was not the monopoly, but the gold standard, which was a an artificial scarcity. It created an artificial scarcity of money, and that paved the way for introducing thereafter book money, particularly bank money, bank deposit money, or call it bank book money. And that became dominant until the present day. And now we are already in an emerging new such tidal change. And each one of these transitions or tidal changes from one type of money to the next, all of these were long-term gradual processes in which the rising new type of money superseded the older incumbents, and with the rise of the new type of money overlapping with the relative decline of the older ones. And now the interesting thing is that these monetary turning points, they do not occur by chance, but there is a certain logic behind. Wait a moment, again, it doesn't move again. I don't know why. Oh, here it does. There is a saying attributed to Mark Twain that has it that history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. And in actual fact, this applies today to these monetary turning points and the corresponding changes in the monetary system and its governance. And the changes occur when two conditions are met. The first is when the incumbent dominant type of money poses recurrent, uncurable problems that cannot be solved within the given framework. And the second condition is there is a new type of money found or invented or emerging, offering some solution to the problem and possibly also additional advantages. And that's exactly the situation we are in today. We have, since several decades, we have an increasing number of crises in the existing monetary system, in the existing bank money regime. The bank money as such is of non-safe stock, and there is repeated instability and crisis proneness in the entire system. And now at the same time, a new type of money is emerging, digital token money. Now, what does this mean? Quite a few people say, well, don't we already have electronic or digital money? Isn't bank money electronic or digital money? And however, the computing and so on, the IT technology involved, I would say it's really two very different types of money. Bank deposit money, by its nature, it's an account balance, whereas digital money is digital token money. It consists of informational tokens that are comparable in a way to solid cash, to coins and notes. They're from the usage of saying crypto coins also. Yeah, that's the analogy. And account balances, of course, are held in a bank account, whereas digital tokens are held in an e-wallet, which stands for electronic wallet, also known as a digital wallet. And bank money is a bank liability, whereas digital tokens in an e-wallet, that's just an asset of the owner only. There is no bank involved. It's not on a bank balance sheet. It's just like cash in your pocket. It's just in your e-wallet, and that's it. And this makes the difference when regarding the payments. Doing a payment with bank money is always an indirect payment, and it's carried out in a complicated interbank process of account clearing and settlement, whereas making a payment with digital tokens, that's done directly, payer to payee, directly peer-to-peer, from one e-wallet into another. That's like cash travels from hand to hand. It's comparable again. Of course, both of these types of money need a corresponding technical infrastructure. And of course, today everything is computerized, of course. And the technical infrastructure for digital tokens is different from the current banking infrastructure. But what is needed, of course, are database operators. There are databases, and the database operators are needed, and also interface providers. That's forward. Here we go. As far as I can see, it's convincing to think that digital money is superior to book money and bank money in various respects. It's listed here. There is an improved ease of handling. The costs of production and provision are lower, and transactional safety is the same or even improved, thanks to procedural steps and related risks eliminated. And also today, the speed of circulation, the use frequency of the money is much the same as with book money, but over time with digital currencies, it will be much faster. And not least, a considerable innovation in having money is that digital tokens are programmable. And this opens new horizons in managing payments and managing financial contracts, for example, in the Internet of Things, in the machine-to-machine communication. So what we have here is we already have various types of digital currency, and the first choice is between public or private money, and the public version is central bank digital currency. And on the side of private cryptocurrencies, we have uncovered cryptocurrencies and covered cryptocurrencies, so-called stable coins. And these four actor groups and these four types of money, these are the relevant types of money today in that emerging power struggle for being the future dominant type of money. In my analysis, central bank digital currency is in the pole position, to put it that way. And uncovered cryptocurrencies, they act as the challenges to sovereign base money. They claim to be base money in their own right. And stable coins, they are a new money surrogate, and they would be challenging bank money if based on CBDC. I come back to that a bit later. And so then we still have the incumbent bank money, and bank money in that situation is on the defense throughout. And this also includes third-tier money surrogates that are based on bank money, such as money market fund shares, or for example, e-money. They are based on bank money, and so their fate, so to say, is related to the fate of bank money. I think that as bank money is very dominant today and is very much entrenched in current practices, it is likely to continue for a longer period of time. We don't know for how long. But it will be, over time, of gradually diminishing importance. Bank money, you see, so far, central banks have presented CBDC as another form of cash, as if it were a marginal addition to bank money in an arrangement of peaceful coexistence between the two. I think that's very misleading. I think the case will be that the coexistence of CBDC and bank money will be one of competition. It will be a relationship of political rivalry, much like the relationship between sovereign money and private money normally used to be throughout the last 400 years. It was only in the last 100 to 150 years, the situation was a little bit different, somewhat different in two respects. Firstly, technologically, central bank cash, so notes and coins, solid cash, that was and is unable to compete with cashless payment. And cashless payment, we always have made in book money. We had to do that, we had no alternative. Because central bank book money, the so-called reserves, that has never been made available to the non-bank public. We were never allowed to have central bank book money. No, we were never allowed to have a central bank transaction account. And in that way, bank money was shielded from having to compete with central bank book money. Now, however, bank money will have to compete with superior central bank digital tokens available to the non-bank public, to all of us. And this is going to be really a fundamental game changer. And I think book money may still be somewhat improved. Why not? Can be. But very basically, book money cannot emulate the advanced technological properties of digital currency. And if you see it over time, book money is actually reaching the end of its learning curve, whereas digital money is still in its early stages of that learning curve with great future potential. I take it over to the wrong side here. Well, the situation can put in other words, and one can say that the change banks are facing right now upon the introduction of CBDC, that change can be described as currency substitution. It's not bank run, it's not disintermediation and whatsoever. The thing is, and also in a way, kind of problem for the banks, that's currency substitution, which simply means that bank money is gradually being replaced with CBDC. And of course, banks do see this as a loss. But as I want to point out, that's not going to be a functional problem for the economy and finance. And it's not even a real operational problem for the banks themselves, because the banks will have available increasing amounts of CBDC as loanable funds for handing out intermediary credit, while they are still they continue to be able to extend monetary credit by way of creating bank money if customers wish so. Ultimately, the extent to which currency substitution will take place, that depends first on whether or not there are severe crises, always causing the threat of bank run, and or whether there is continued or discontinued state warranty for bank money. Because today, the central banks act as lender of last resort when banks are in trouble, when they have liquidity problems or similar problems, and the government actually acts as bank money guarantor of last instance, and sometimes also as bank recapitalizer of last instance, if need be. And that's actually what has always rescued bank money in the last well, almost 100 years, one can say. Now let's come to CBDC. Why can one be so sure that central banks will even introduce CBDC? And why can I be of the opinion that CBDC is actually in the pole position, so to say? And the answer can partially be seen here. This is a map of the world where you can see the various currency areas. And as you can see, most of these currency areas, most central banks today are in train of developing CBDC. some in an earlier stage, some already in a late stage, and some already having actually launched CBDC in their country, for example, in the Bahamas, but also in China. China is listed here as still running pilot, but in China, that pilot is a very, very huge pilot. And it was launched in February last year, 22. And now there are already several hundreds of millions users of digital yuan having a digital wallet with digital yuan in there. That's actually not longer a pilot. That's there. The CBDC is actually already launched. Other countries are also in advanced stages of running pilots and so on. I have mentioned a number of reasons why bank money is on the defense, and for all these reasons mentioned, central bank money in the form of CBDC is a first choice. That's just the other side of the picture. And the reason again is that private cryptos, like private money in general, private cryptos, they cannot compete with CBDC. Technically, perhaps they could, not however monetarily. Regarding the legal and institutional status of CBDC, its reliability and similar aspects. And being the sovereign base money, CBDC is as safe and secure as money can be, and for it is built on the central bank's ability to create any amount of money according to need and according to necessity, as far as justified in keeping monetary and financial stability. Also, as I've said, CBDC is directly owned by the holders rather than being a bank liability. And I think that money users will have a tendency towards holding CBDC rather than holding bank money. Over time, I mean. It will be easy to use, less transaction risks, faster, cheaper, etc., etc. And then, over time, that's now a little bit utopian. Over time, CBDC may not only be issued as credit and debt money, but also be issued debt-free by way of genuine seigniorage. And that money is spent. It is not loaned into circulation, but that is for the later future. Before that, and considering monetary policy, if there are growing quantities of CBDC, if there is a significant mass of CBDC in the money supply, this will very much strengthen the transmission lever of monetary policy and making it more effectual again. In particular, CBDC will re-enable monetary quantity policy. That was not possible in the last 30, 40, 50 years because central banks had come in a situation where they had no choice but to accommodate reactively, in hindsight, to accommodate the facts the banks have created beforehand. And if CBDC is becoming ever more important as a mass, as a quantity in the money supply, that will change considerably. And this will also directly strengthen the transmission of base rate policy. And on both accounts, that will make regain the control over money creation, or say much more control over money creation, and a continued readjustment. Now, at the beginning of introducing CBDC, I would say during the next 10 years, I would say, firstly, expect much resistance from the side of the banking business, from the side of the banking lobby. Much resistance from their side. That has just begun. And do not expect already at the beginning a kind of monetary revolution. It will just be about first steps in a very long-term process. Also central banks right now, I mean, even if developing central bank money, CBDC was actually initiated from the side of central banks, the central banks overall are rather reluctant, and they are pursuing a rather conservative stance. They are hyper cautious, or you can also say they are bank protective when it's about introducing CBDC. And so the two-tier, their plan, the current plan, the central bank plan for introducing CBDC involves keeping the two-tier banking system and keeping bank money. For how long, we don't know. And CBDC will be circulated via the banks. Also, the banks will have to fund that 100%, but nevertheless, it's circulated only via the banks. And not least, at the beginning, the availability of CBDC, that will be limited, and the usability will be restricted. For example, currently in China, transactions in yuan are limited to 5,000 yuan. That's about $730 US daily, and 50,000 yuan annually. Or, for example, to my knowledge, the plan of the Swedish e-krona will be restricted in the same way as currently the use of cash is restricted in Sweden. And similarly, the plan for introducing a digital euro is very likely to include a limit of 1,000 euros per transaction and a limit of having 3,000 euros in store. Now, here again. So now let's come to the outlook for uncovered cryptocurrencies. What you see here is the market capitalization, the development of cryptocurrencies in recent years, and you can see these fulminant bull markets, and then two crashes, which overall includes much volatility, and always the wrong side. But look at the numbers. That's about an awful lot of money. It's about $3,000 billion. So these are trillions of dollars. That's really a lot. And in this table, that is from the mid-21, the dollar-denominated stock of cryptocurrencies was at $2.5 trillion. And that compares to cash across the world, US dollar notes across the world of the order of $2.1 trillion, and all checkable deposits in the United States just being not even double of the US denominated cryptocurrencies. So these are really very relevant quantities of money that can no longer be ignored. It's no longer a negligible quantity of money. And also here you can see that who does the trade in cryptocurrencies, and it's the business, or it has become the business of institutional and professional traders or investors. And this makes clear that cryptocurrencies have become a new class of financial assets. That's clear. The question is whether it's really money or whether it's going to be money. So the status of the cryptocurrencies moneyness, that's not yet settled. And as far as it is used as money and will be used as money, it can have, of course, all the technological advantages of digital money, but it lacks all of the monetary advantages of central bank digital currency. Currently, cryptocurrencies are not supported by central banks and governments, And as long as this is the case, and I think that will continue to be the case, as long as this is so, cryptos will not meet with broad-based acceptance from the side of the general public. Furthermore, cryptocurrencies will sooner or later be subject to regulatory restrictions, or they will even be prohibited, as China has done in September 21. And also for now, most cryptos, they operate too slowly. They are much too energy intensive, thus very expensive, and of course also volatile, and thus they are not competitive. And when you compare the transactions per second that can be done with the various types of money, so then you can see at the bottom that most used cryptocurrencies based on the distributed ledger technology or blockchain technology, Bitcoin and Ethereum, are very slowly, very expensive, highly energy intensive. That's untenable. That's not competitive. So in the middle range, in the middle field, where you have the large credit card corporations and the payment systems of the large central banks, these are pretty speedy, between 1,000, 2,000, up to 10,000 transactions per second. The digital yuan can already do up to 10,000 transactions per second. And there are now new developments underway or already operational, new technologies to create digital tokens and transfer digital tokens that will be much more, that can do much more transactions per second than was able hitherto. So the outlook for uncovered cryptocurrencies, in my opinion, is, that's again the wrong direction. For the reasons mentioned, uncovered cryptos are presumably without much future as regular money. That is as an all-purpose means of payment of widespread use. That's unlikely. But I think that cryptos, they are likely to remain. They are here to stay as a special purpose means for special user groups. That, yes, for example, as a Forex-like investment vehicle, or for doing cross-border transactions, and of course also for illicit transactions from the underground economy or similar uses. If cryptocurrencies have a future as money, I think, then it is likely to be in the form of stable coins. What are stable coins? Stable coins are digital tokens. My God, what's that? Wait a moment. They are digital tokens packed in a stable one-to-one ratio to a national currency unit. So what stablecoins promise is not to be of stable value, not that. What they promise is to have a stable pack, one-to-one, with a variable and perhaps unstable currency unit. And this pact is achieved either by using an algorithm, a buy or sell algorithm, or by actual cover in crypto coins, in bank money and interest-bearing cash equivalents, which are short-term securities. That's the way the issuers of stable coins can earn money, or a combination of both. And here you see the fulminant takeoff of stable coins between 2018 into May 2022. And currently, stable coins are regulated in that they are treated like e-money in the European Union. Whereas in the United States, pertinent regulation is still missing, and this has given rise to some problems, some functional problems, and even to fraud. Originally, stablecoins were created as a safe haven in crypto trading, going out of the respective crypto into a stablecoin when the crypto threatens to plummet, and when the cryptos tend to have a turnaround upwards, then going out of the stablecoin and back into the cryptocurrency. Still, this is the most common use of stablecoins so far. And in the context of the cryptocurrency crash in 22, so a few stablecoins actually failed to keep the promise of a stable peg to the US dollar, which basically is not very surprising if an important part of liquid cover, so to say, consists of uncovered cryptocurrencies. So there was also a crash in the stablecoins, but it was not so important actually. And as you can see in this chart here, there was a crash, but it found some stabilization, and there is now no more optimism for further going up, but it's a sideways movement. It's not really going down. And I think this is not the end of the story, but this is just the beginning of the story. The problem is that birth chord between stablecoins and unbacked cryptocurrencies. As long as that birth chord is not cut off, the prospects for stablecoins remain as limited as are the prospects for uncovered cryptos. However, if backed by a reliable base, especially CBDC, the prospects for stablecoins should not be underestimated. And in that case, stablecoins will not be a competitor to CBDC, for this wouldn't make sense if based on CBDC, but that would be, based on CBDC, that would be a challenge for bank money. Stablecoins would be a digital token competitor to bank money, and that, of course, would be another blow to bank money. So thus far, the presentation I had prepared for this webinar, and now back to you, Samuel.
Thank you very much for this intriguing presentation. Very interesting. Yeah, let's continue with just a short interview. Some questions to you, Joseph. So, how long time have you been into this subject about money and monetary reform?
I would say a very long time. I would say continually up to now. I have done work almost close to 30 years. And originally, however, my first look into the money system, that was the beginning of my interest. It was in 1975 already.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
That's almost 50 years. That's almost a lifetime.
Yeah. But why did you become interested in this subject? What was the first thing that made you interested in it?
The reason was that at the time, in 1975, I was a research staff at some economics university in Switzerland, and we had a future studies group, and somewhat out of the box, and money and finance was an issue there. Not only money and finance, but particularly that topic that has fascinated me, and it hasn't let me go. I can't say why. What I can say is my motivation. So it was in the context of future studies. It was in the context of scenario building and creating visions for future development paths. And it's not a negative motivation. I met quite a few people in the monetary reform movement who were considering themselves to be, say, banking victims. So they made bad experiences with money and banks. I, for my part, happily, I had not to have such experiences. And actually, I think that basically money, like the development of script, is actually one of the great achievements of humankind. That's what I think.
Mm. And you still continue to write things. You have this brand new book. And what motivated you to write this, to continue with this subject and writing this book now?
It was the continued motivation I had throughout the last almost 30 years. So you see, our thinking on money and monetary reform and monetary system that has, of course, developed, and from the beginning, and particularly in the last, I would say, where are we now, 23, but already before the great financial crisis of 08 and the following years, already before, there was a considerable development and new ideas about money coming up. For example, looking at complementary currencies at a more local level, or monetary reform ideas regarding the entire system. So that was interesting, though there was something in the air. New ideas about that were popping up, you see, and then was the crisis of 08, and that was a boost to the entire development, and there was growing public interest, and our ideas and the analyses were developing every year from year to year, and that's why I came to write one paper after the other, and after several years. So one book after the other, because our view and vision of things and our analysis got ever more detailed and ever more deeper. And so, well, now we arrived at CBDC.
Yeah, it's a super interesting field. Yeah. We're very happy that you have written this book. And now to some more technical questions, or maybe a lot of you that are here now today, maybe some of you have not read so much of the subject. Some may have been very deep into it, but some of you may, this may be the first time. So just to very shortly try to sum up some of the things here. So the basic taxonomy here, we have state money and private money. That is correct. That is the basic distinction, I think. Yeah. And then if you go into state money, then it's coins and notes and CBDC. CBDC would be a new type of state money. And then into the private money, we have the bank money and crypto. And in the crypto category, we have the uncovered and the covered cryptocurrencies. And what you call the stable coins, that's a kind of, that's a version of the covered cryptocurrencies. And your argument was that an uncovered cryptocurrency would be a challenger on the base level, a challenge with like base money challenger. Can you just define? Maybe everyone is not used to this terminology. What is base money? What's the difference here? You speak about the 2-tier system and the 3-tier systems. It's different tiers here. Just to summary again here, if someone not followed, we can just take it very, very short. Yeah.
Wait a moment. Can you see that again?
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes.
And can you see this taxonomy of types of money?
Yes.
Can you see that? Okay. You see there, it's a taxonomy of money, and we have a base level, and there is a second and a third tier. And the base level, that means that's a technical term. it's generally used in economics, the distinction between base money and money surrogates. And base money is today central bank money, or say it's treasury issued money, has been in some countries. And so at the base level, the money where money is legal tender by sovereign fiat and so on, these are traditional coins and notes, and the so-called central bank reserve, that's central bank money on central bank account, and in the future also CBDC. No? And that type of money need not be covered monetarily. The modern type of money, there need not be a gold base or something like that. It's money by sovereign fiat, and behind that is the credibility of a strong state to support its currency. That's behind. And of course, a stable and strong economy, that's behind. If that doesn't exist, money is worth nothing, you know, so. And monetarily and technically, that base money is not redeemable in other types of money. Whereas, for example, at the second tier, bank money today is dominant, but technically speaking, it's still a money surrogate. It still needs some backing in base money and central bank money. So, and in the meantime, there are additional money surrogates that can be called third tier money surrogates that build on bank money, that are using bank money as their operational basis. And among these third tier new money surrogates are money market fund shares of a very important amount, much more than, for example, checkable deposits. It's also e-money, so-called e-money, which means electronic money, but that's based on, that's a different sort, that's not digital tokens, that can be confusing. For example, there is e-money, a so-called M-Pesa e-money in Kenya, and other countries in Latin America and Africa. That's e-money that is held on a mobile phone and is based by having paid in cash. No? The Kenyans pay in cash and they get e-money on their mobile phone. And that's very practical in those countries because very few people there have a bank account, but almost all people now have a mobile phone. And so that type of e-money spread was really spreading very much. And I would say also complementary currencies today. So for local currencies, special purpose currencies, if backed by bank money or by cash or central bank money, they are also third-tier money surrogates. Stable coins, by contrast, if they were based on CBDC, they were also third-tier money surrogates, but today, as they are largely based on CBDC, so they are a money surrogate of a different kind. So we will see that in the future. Now, below, so I have written base level challenges, and these are in fact uncovered cryptocurrencies and also uncovered complementary currencies. And they pretend, or say they claim, they are base money in their own right. They said, we create a different system apart from the state system. We are not interested in the state and we are not interested in the overall society. We set up a system of our own. It's quasi-anarchic idea of launching, so to say, saying that kind of private sovereign money in its own right. But as I try to explain, I don't think that will work over time.
Yeah, thank you for this clarification. I hope it's clear now for everyone, this entire structure and different kinds of money. If not, you can just send emails and ask us and we can try to clarify things even more later on. And you also mentioned the base, the book money term, just that book money and bank deposits. It's the almost the same thing. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the term book money refers to the monetary technique, so to say. It's it's an account balance on a bank account, so and so on. Whereas the term, when saying bank money, that means it's different from, say, central bank money, or it's different from the money of other issuers. So the term bank money actually means it's book money or deposit money issued by a bank, not by the central bank. So that's what it means.
So book money is the technical thing. Book money,
yes,
as opposed to digital token money. That's two different kind of technology you can use.
Yes, and
bank money is, and the state money, it's who is the issuer. So,
yes, right. Yeah, the term book money comes from it's a creation of accounting. You know, it's created in the books, that book money, and originally no one thought of these account balances in terms of money. So it took quite a long time before or until what we today call bank money, until that bank book money was recognized as being in actual fact money, in a sense of a very widespread means of payment for a multi-purpose or a general purpose means of payment. That was only actually in the late 19th century when that started to see it that way. And it took many decades before book bank money or book bank deposit money was really recognized as being money, and actually the dominant type of money we have.
Just two more terms, very short, and then we continue with more interesting, substantial questions. But seigniorage, what's that term? Maybe people are not used to it.
Yeah, seigniorage, that comes from the feudal term, the seigneur. The seigneur was the feudal lord, and the lord had the prerogative of the coinage and to issue, to stamp money and to mint money and to issue money. And that was the prerogative of the seigneur. And it always used to be when in the end of feudalism, so the state in general and also the democratic state took over these formally sovereign prerogatives as constitutional prerogatives of modern states. And among these are, for example, the legislation and the judiciary and territorial administration and the prerogative to use force, and also the prerogative of the monetary prerogative, having monetary sovereignty, the state having monetary sovereignty, which means defining the national unit of account and creating the money that is denominated in that national unit of account, and also taking in the gain or the profit from money creation, because that's a source of considerable income. It's a source of considerable profit for the banks today. Formerly, that was just the difference between the production costs and the face value, the purchasing power of the money. But today, with bank book money, the banks do not have immediately the traditional sort of seigniorage. What they have is a seigniorage-like privilege of they earn interest on 100% of the bank money they have created, while only having to refinance a fraction of it, of 2, 3, 4, 5% of the bank money they have created. They have to refinance in central bank money, and all the rest is created by the banks free of everything, and they can take in interest on this freely created money. That's their privilege and the advantage they have today over all other financial actors who have to finance everything they do 100%, whereas the banks can do business without having the money beforehand.
Thank you. The clock is going very fast here. Maybe just 1, 2, 3 questions more. You can stop me, Lucille, if you think that's taking too long time here. Yeah.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, but just to sum up here, you see book money, this technology, as an old technology. It's like horse and cart that the state today keeps alive through some kind of artificial breathing. It's all of the bank privileges and the warranties and guarantees to the banks. You write in your book that as a purely private means of payment without state warranty, bank money would have perished long ago, as private banknotes did in the past. Do you think there would be any bad consequences of continuing to keep bank money alive for a long time? Like it seems that many states and central banks are doing that.
Well, yes, of course. Yes, of course. I mean, as I tried to briefly say in the presentation, the turning points in the history of money, they occur when the incumbent money poses severe problems, and there are problems inherent to bank money that cannot be overcome within the present framework. And that problem is firstly that it's the fractional reserve. Bank money is based on a fractional reserve of central bank money, and that ever so often creates liquidity problems for the banks. And the other thing is that, which was recognized only in the late 19th century, the bank credit theory of money that dates from the 1890s. And from that time on, it was recognized, or was slowly but surely, it was recognized that bank money, also central bank money, by the way, bank money today is credit and debt money. It's even identified today. The textbooks say money is credit and credit is money. I think that's wrong. You know, it's a false identity. But today, in actual fact, bank money is credit and debt money, and that money is created by way of monetary credit when a bank is extending credit to non-bank customers. And that means that the stock of money is exposed and closely linked to the inevitable risks of the financial system. You know, banking has and will always be a very risky business. Financial economy has certain risks and so on. And by exposing the stock of money to the financial risks, the stock of money is always threatened when there are problems in the financial systems, particularly when there are problems with the banks. And so the central banks and the state have to step in, the government, the treasuries, they have to step in to rescue the banks in order to rescue the bank money, because that's what we are operating on. If they wouldn't do so, if they didn't that, the entire economy would break down and would not recover by itself. You know, that's the big problem. And that's why unduly bank money has achieved a parastate status today. It's still a private money surrogate, but it has achieved quasi-sovereign status because it is, under all conditions, always rescued by the central bank and by the government. And that's the big problem.
Yeah, then it seems that's a good idea to get rid of bank money as soon as possible then. Just a short objection also that is common. It is that CBDC has privacy issues. It's the possibility of the state to monitor its citizens. China, for example, they may have an ambition to use its digital yuan to a big brother scenario here and watch over its citizens. Then maybe we should start to use a decentralized cryptocurrency instead then to guarantee the privacy of everyone. Or what do you say about this?
Yes, you are right. I expected you to to come up with that question. And actually, one can be concerned with regard to China. You know, I mean, the Chinese government and the central bank so far, they promise confidentiality of payments, but you never know. Well, you see, quite a few people, they don't like the idea of digital currencies and the idea of central bank digital currency because they are so afraid of Big Brother coming. And for not to be misunderstood, that's really a very serious problem. And we really have to take that seriously. In my opinion, that let's say the problem is financial privacy, say financial privacy and also confidentiality. And I would say that should be treated, or that should be considered as a civil right and liberty. I'm of that opinion. But you know that problem of financial privacy, that has already been a problem for a long time before introducing CBDC or modern cryptocurrencies. It's been a problem since we have step by step introduced modern technologies in the book money system already, and by computerizing and so on, by the IT technology and online communication and so on. The problems with book money basically are very similar to the problems arriving already with CBDC. And in my opinion, wait a moment, in my opinion, I think that basically it's not a question of technology. Of course, it is a question of technology, but not in the first place. In the first place, it's a question of the political system. It's the question of whether you have a reliable rule of law, defending civil rights and liberties, and governed by democracy. If you have such political conditions, the chances are not so bad that financial privacy and confidentiality of payments and so on, that will be kept. But if you have an autocratic system, as one says today, an authoritarian system, a repressive system, and so on, then of course there are considerable dangers of misusing the possibilities of digital tokens. That's for sure, yes.
Yeah, it seems reasonable to see it as a problem of the political system. And also, I mean, private companies today, they monitor our shopping behavior and they do data mining from that.
Yes.
And it also may be the case that the CBDC maybe it may be a way for the state, for a good state, to solve the privacy problems of the private market and to guarantee all citizens better personal integrity than the market can guarantee them.
Samuel,
Yeah.
we should move on. There are a lot of
we should move on. Sorry for taking too much time here.
No,
now over
great.
to the questions.
Right.
You can take over here.
Okay, just Kirill, I think you're up next.
Thanks, Kirill, my name here from Switzerland. So the retail CBDC project in Sweden for e-krona is one of the most advanced projects within Europe. And it has been postponed now or stopped. Maybe you know that. And do you think that the true reason for that is, for postponing the project, is the current banking crisis, Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, and it could be an attempt to avoid bank run towards e-krona in Sweden once people understand the system? Thanks.
Have you been asking me? Have you been asking me? Yeah, okay. Well, of course, I don't know whether the near banking crisis of March, considering Credit Suisse and Silicon Valley Bank and so, whether that's really the reason behind that reluctance and hesitance of the central banks to go on, and politicians increasingly to go on to push CBDC. I think it's already the influence of the banking lobby. For many years, I was wondering why banks did not react to the development of CBDC. But then it slowly started already throughout the year 22 and now more openly in the year we are in 23. Bankers are step by step, they wake up to the possible threat CBDC can be to bank money. I don't know why. Prior to that, they didn't react. I don't know whether or not they did not see what was going on, but now they are waking up to that problem for them, and they are organizing their defense. They are building defense positions and resistance to that development. And very surely they have many supporters in conservative politics, and because not many politicians really understand how the monetary system works. In many cases, it's enough to say, oh, that will create big problems. It will ruin our monetary system, and would be a national disaster. That was the case in Switzerland, by the way. They didn't argue substantially. They simply said, oh, that will be the end of our world. That was argument enough, you know. And I think that's beginning now. And also within central banks, you say, one really can have that impression, as I said, that central bankers are split over CBDC. Some are supporting the current systems, and some see the necessity to make some changes and go ahead. And so the central banks overall, they are a bit running ahead of their convictions, and they themselves are not entirely sure whether or not it's a good idea or not. I think that's behind. And that's the beginning of what I consider to become a true power struggle. And that will not only be a financial struggle in the economy, that is also a struggle for political influence, because these questions are decided on a political level. That's not decided by the markets. Partially by the markets, yes, by market demand, sure. But in the first place, that's decided on the political level, and that's the beginning of that struggle.
Thank you, Kirill. Go ahead and unmute Leah.
Hi, yes. So Adam Smith said that currency has no intrinsic value. It derives its value because it's a medium of exchange from the goods and services in any given economy. So it seems to me that CBDCs, the development of them, is a way for the central banks to take back control from private banks who've had the power to create money out of thin air, which has led to the numerous banking crises we've experienced over the past few decades. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I really do. But I would simply like to add what gives value to money. That's not only, it is of course productivity of the economy, but not only, it's also the standing, if it's a national currency, about a national currency, it's the standing of a respective nation state. So the economy needs to have a good standing, needs to be respected, and it needs to be a state that is respected and a state and trusted to be able to defend what's to be defended in the national interest. That's an important point. That's by the way the chartalist side of monetary theory. That the stability and the existence and the stability of money and the monetary system to a considerable degree also depends on the legal status of the money. It depends on the stature of the national state that has that money as its currency and so on. In addition, of course, to having a productive economy.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask very quickly about the future of the US petrodollar? Because it seems to me as countries are pricing oil in currencies other than the dollar, Russia was first after the war in Ukraine. I think other Saudi Arabia is turning away from the United States. Do you think this is going to lead to a crash, inevitable crash in the value of the dollar and its displacement as the international exchange currency? And maybe it's time for Keynes's original idea to have something like Bancor, an international exchange currency that all nations use?
Yeah. Well, personally, I would think, thinking of the Keynesian idea of a Bancor, of creating today with the help of the International Monetary Fund to create a basket of currencies that already exists in the form of special drawing rights, and to develop that further into a transnational or international currencies. I think it's a good idea, but I think that's not the path realpolitik is following, you see, because we not only have dominant types of money within a certain currency area, but in between the currency area, we have more or less dominant national currencies. And so the states and the nation states that have a good standing there, they are actually not prepared to give up their position. And if there are new contenders, you see the Chinese at the beginning, they tried to reform the IMF. And I think the idea they basically had was to open that a little bit, and to have a better parities among the different currencies that are represented there in the special drawing rights. And they had the idea themselves coming in ever more by following that path, and they have given up. What they are doing now is they have started trying to dethrone the incumbent. Now that they are trying to develop their own currency, the yuan, especially the digital yuan, to become a true challenger to the US dollar. That's what they are doing now.
Yeah.
And so I'm afraid Keynes' idea still has to wait some time before its day will become.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Stella, thank you.
Yes, thank you. I actually have some questions regarding your view of CBDC, because I was really surprised that you said that CBDCs are as safe and secure as can be. And then you say nothing of the fact that they're programmable and in fact will create a social credit system and excessive state surveillance. I mean, even if you can monitor today, you cannot control on what you spend your money on as you will with CBDCs. You can also not limit where you can spend it, like you can do people in lockdown and say you can't spend it more than 2 kilometers from your house or something like that. You said that, and you also stated that this is like the currency that will take over for the fiat, and the fiat has such a large volume. But the fact that fiat has such a large volume is what has broken the system, because it builds on like modern monetary theory. And that is the only reason why they have so large volume out, and because they print it out of thin air, it's not backed by anything. So there is no really difference between. And there's nothing to say that the state's systems will be more secure from hacking, since, you know, private centralized DLTs can be subject to hacking, whether they're run by Ethereum or the government, right? And Ethereum also has soon 100,000 transactions per second. So my question is really, do you see a risk, considering in almost every country, but our focus on the EU since we're there, the EU is issuing the EU digital identity wallet that will be government control, and the CBDCs, the euros and the e-krona and all of that. And they also want to do this new, or has passed this new legislation where you can monitor every citizen's every written message as well. So you can monitor every aspect where you're moving to, restrict that with the the digital IDs and also the currency. Do you see that this really is as safe and secure as can be? And do you see any problems from a democracy and freedom perspective with the CBDCs?
Yeah. Well, you see your statement. So your statement that represents the worst case scenario we can have, and very certainly I can actually imagine political circumstances where your fears would come true. That yes, that is possible, you know, as well as say we have nuclear weapons, and
yeah, but the IMF says,
you know, and you are really nurturing that worst case scenario as if it were sure that this will be coming. I don't think so. I don't think so. As I said, if we continue to have a reasonable rule of law in a reasonably way, defending civil rights and liberties, that will not happen. What you are fearing.
But they are not in the EU currently. They are infringing on that already.
I think you're exaggerating. And by the way,
the IMF has explicitly said that the purpose of CBDCs is total control.
No, that's nonsense.
Yes, they have.
I
have seen the.
No, that's blunt nonsense. No, nobody has said that. Excuse me. I'm very sorry.
That's not true.
No,
yes,
that's really not true. And by the way, the current bank money regime doesn't follow a modern money theory. And it was actually that we have the problems today. So that overshooting money creation in the past, and particularly after the financial crisis, that was actually owed to the overshooting bank money creation that had nothing to do with MMT. MMT is focused on government money creation, and they do not consider and not analyze how bank money creation works. And then the central banks had to react, and that was very problematic, that entire policy of quantitative easing, but it was the alternative to a total crash of the economy and society. And so they had to act that way. That was already in reaction to bank money creation. And that's why we actually need more state control over money creation, not over the uses of money, as I want to stress. I said it's about money creation. Who is in control of money creation? Whereas the uses of money, that should be left to the people and to the markets.
So I'm going to move on to a question to Marianne, there she is. And I would ask Ryan and Samuel to monitor the chat a little bit if there are questions there that are crucial to be raised, that you chime with those in. Go ahead, Marianne, thank you.
Okay, yes, hello, Joseph.
Hello.
I have been into this money business about as long as you have. And during the 90s, I was participating in extremely interesting seminars by Margaret Kennedy called Money Matters. I suppose you are familiar with them.
Yes, I am, yes.
Yes, and I translated her book into Swedish, and I have after that written a book of my own. So I'm a generalist, so I haven't spent very much time on this specific names on the money creating. I understand what you say, but I haven't gone into detail, so to say. But I wonder, did you meet this guy Thomas Greco, for instance, James Robertson, Bernard Leiter. They had, Bernard Leiter, for instance, had the idea of currencies on different levels. And I think the positive money movement is interesting and important, but we also have to speak about the bigger frame of what is economy and what is the economic system promoting. Now we have, for instance, maybe only 2% of what we call money moves around serving the real economy. And we have very much in the speculative sphere, and that's a big problem. So, and Thomas Greco, for instance, he is working very eagerly and strongly on this local money system. And I think they are very important too.
Do you have a question?
No, I have no question. I just wanted to, my question was, if you, Seth, also met these other guys that were
Yes.
important.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, okay, thanks for your contribution. It actually touches me what you say, because you know, I know all of the people in person. I know them all, the people you have mentioned, and particularly with Margaret and Declan Kennedy. I was a good friend. We were good friends early on, and I have to say that particularly James Robertson had a role to play in my own development. We met in 1977 at a futurist conference in Arc-et-Senans in France. And from that point in time onwards, we remained in contact, and we were continuously, ongoingly, we cooperated, and actually we were friends, you know.
Yeah.
And so that was not by chance that we have written that booklet on creating new money together. And I also, me as you have translated things into Swedish, so I have translated papers, articles by James Robertson into German and so on. I also knew Bernard Lietaer and Thomas Greco. The differences I had with Bernard Lietaer and also Thomas Greco, that was that I see complementary currencies can be very useful at a local level or in special interest groups or so. I don't think it can be a solution for the entire economy at the macro level. So I didn't see that. And Bernard Lietaer, actually, he believed that complementary currencies, that could be a solution, a macro solution for ultimately for the entire economy. And I'm still very skeptical about that. But in our monetary reform group, we actually thought that monetary reform by way of introducing local complementary currencies bottom up, and doing monetary reform by legislation top down for the macroeconomy, this too should be, can be and should be a complementary process, you know?
Yes, absolutely.
Working together, not against each other.
No, sure. And Bernard Leiter, as I was his friend also.
I see. Yeah.
But Bernard Leiter, he had these different levels, because he would see a global currency or a few global currencies, and then national currency, regional currency, local currency. And it's improving. The discussion around local currencies are improving. So we have a guy here in Sweden with whom you could befriend also. He's called Stephen Hinton. and he's, yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Marianne. As we move on to Sunny here, I just want to say that I also knew Margaret Kennedy and have a quote from her after she wrote her Occupy Money book, in which she explicitly said that she agreed with what Dr. Huber just said, that we need both macro and meso level monetary reform, not only the meso level, not only the local currency level. And so she explicitly said that this is a quote, you are absolutely right about your critique. So go ahead, Sunny, thank you. You have to unmute, sorry.
I did that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good, thank you. I had written this in the chat as well. I appreciate your presentation. It's enlightening in a number of respects. However, I do have a couple of questions regarding the advisability of moving to CBDCs. You had stated in your presentation that CBDCs would be as safe and secure as money can be, as well as saying that they would be directly owned by the holders. But since CBDCs would be programmable, what is to prevent central banks acting on their own initiative or being pressured by the governments they're associated with from limiting what we could spend the CBDCs on? And accounts could be frozen by the issuers if the account holder was deemed to be acting against the interests or wishes of the governments. So it seems to me the real holders of the owners of the account would not be the account holders then, but the issuers, because as an account holder, if the CBDCs were issued to me by my central bank in the U.S., the Federal Reserve, then if they determined I was stepping out of line in some way, then they could just freeze my account for as long as they chose to. And if I didn't have an alternative, if they had eliminated bank money by that point, then that would be the end of my being able to do anything except barter with people.
Was that statement you made? Yeah. Well, I don't understand this to be a question. It was a statement I can follow. I understand what you say, but again, I think it's really a worst case scenario, and I'm not sure that. I guess again, look into China. So they have this social credit or social points for behavioral judgment. You know, Chinese can obtain positive or negative points according to their behavior in public behavior, and to me that's really a concern. Actually, it's a threat. You know, that's true. But I think we can't make things unhappen. You know, you can make things undo. If things are in the world, they are here to stay. We cannot undo that. We can take precautionary measures to avoid the worst, and that's why I said it's in the first place, it's a question of political circumstance, not that much a question of technology. And by the way, I am not so sure, you know. The technology of digital tokens, I mean, it's just in the beginning. And particularly if digital tokens are really issued like formerly solid cash was issued, and it's no longer in a bank account or so, you know. I don't know how far it would be legal to manipulate, so to say, or to reprogram their digital tokens in circulation. If you have a liberal and democratic state, that will not be allowed. But I agree, of course, when you say, yeah, there might be political circumstances and so on. It may be, but you see, that's not a real argument against CBDC, because that development is going to happen. It's like the entire history of modernization. You could have said at the beginning of the development of paper money and after 1655 or so, you could have. There are so many possibilities of manipulation and misuse and so on. And in fact, things have been misused, yes. But I mean, the possibility that something could happen is not an argument to make an entire, very far-reaching development to interrupt that. That will not happen simply. Even if you would like to do that, it will not happen. It's not realistic to expect someone could do that.
Sunny, I think we need, for the sake of time, we need to move on. Thank you.
Brief follow-up.
Whoops. I guess, go ahead, Klaus. I think we should move on.
Yeah, yeah. Hello to everybody. From my point of view, just because something is possible to happen, you shouldn't take measures. Well, we experienced that the last 3 years, that measures were taken because something could happen. But anyway, yeah, greetings to everyone, and very nice to join this communication and this conference. I already questioned, already posted my question, but I can state it here. I doubt, or I question, if there is real competition between central banks and the commercial banks. So that's basically my point. Given the history of central banks, the foundation of central banks, Bank of England, for instance, and yeah, the actual concentration of wealth and power we have in this moment of history, or like interest groups like the group of 30. So the question is there really a competition? Because we are talking about power. Issuing money is power, is pure power. So could it be that this scenario, and we heard a lot of skepticism now in this conference already, could it be that there is no competition and they're in the background, they are working together to push CBDC? Well, Germany lost against Mexico in the World Cup in Russia when there was this the question in Switzerland to make the monetary reform. I remember that day when Germany lost 2-0 to Mexico. So that's basically the question.
Yeah. Well, I think when judging by the intentions, particularly by the published intentions, it looks like the relationship between central bank and banks is as you say, but I think that's just the surface of it. And if CBDC is really going to be introduced, so by by the very nature of these types of money, there will be competition between, I wouldn't say between central banks and banks. In the first place, I would say between CBDC and conventional bank money. Because as a matter of fact, you see, when looking back, the 20th century and also the 19th century, in the 19th century, central bank cash was still dominant. So, but then towards the end of that century, clearing of bank accounts and so bank money that spread ever more. And so that was a kind of competition. It wasn't like how should I say, a sporting event, you know. But it was a competition, and over time, in actual fact, central bank cash was driven out of the money supply ever more by the expansion of bank money. That was a competition. And what I am expecting by analyzing what is likely, in my view, to go on, CBDC has the potential now over the years and decades to drive out bank money because it has various properties that are superior to bank book money. And for the central banks, that's of course, they are in, and before themselves, they are in an ambivalent position, because considering the paradigms that they are following, but also the real things that are going on, central banks today are considered and consider themselves to be lenders of last resort. They are, so to say, programmed to cooperate with the banking sector. But you see, when you see that from a constitutional point of view, from a state legal point of view, that's actually, in my understanding, it's a kind of constitutional monstrosity that state bodies such as the central bank and the treasury and the taxpayer, we the people, so to say, we are here to stand bail for the private banks and private bank money in case if need be. So in my understanding, that's an untenable situation. And I'm very sure, particularly after the Libra experience, when all of a sudden, you know, the attempt of Facebook to launch a stablecoin by the name of Libra, that all of a sudden made many politicians rediscover the importance of monetary sovereignty. And I think that is there is a rethinking going on, and so there will be, I expect to be, growing tension also, not only cooperation, but also some degree of tension between central banks and banks, because central banks they will have to regain control over money creation. And that's, of course, something banks don't want. And central banks can only regain a significant degree of some degree of control over money creation if there is more central bank money in public circulation. And so that's why I think there will be an increasing power struggle, actually. And if I'm not wrong, I remember that the first publications by central bank staff on CBDC expressly mentioned that their intention is to introduce CBDC side by side with bank money, but also competing with bank money. And in later publication, that was dropped. It didn't reappear. But at the beginning, so that stuff, so they understood what's going on.
Can I just add a concrete example? In Sweden, for example, when the Swedish Central Bank published their reports about the Swedish e-krona, CBDC in Sweden, the bankers' associations were very negative in their So there was a very clear conflict between the Bankers Association and the central bank here. And also in Sweden, we have a state investigation about the state's role in the payment markets. And this investigation, they have just published their results, and they are influenced by the Bankers Association, and they have exactly the same argumentation, the same arguments as they are using. And they're saying that the CBDC is really bad. We should not have it. It's like we already have digital money in Sweden. We don't need a CBDC. That's basically their argument. So they recommend the politicians to not implement it. So it is a very clear power conflict here between the banks and the central banks.
Don, you want to go with your question? And it could be this is the last one before we let Sam and Dr. Hooper wrap up. Sorry to everybody. I think it means that we may need another webinar, and maybe within the month period that we have spent money to expand our Zoom room to 500 people. So we might fit it in there. Go ahead, Don.
Good morning. Don Richards from Positive Money, New Zealand. Here in New Zealand, our central bank is talking about CBDC being used as a value anchor only, which actually will constitute about 2% of our money. And stable coins will be with private banks. Do you see this as a sustainable option for private banks to take control of stablecoin and CBDC being just a value anchor?
Don, I'm very sorry, but I did not understand the intention. That what did you say? CBDC is intended to be introduced.
A value anchor. A value anchor.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that it allows a one-to-one conversion between central bank and the private bank money. At the moment, cash is used as a value anchor to provide value to the bank-created money.
Yeah, well, what would that mean? That would mean that the central bank plans to exchange so-called reserves, book money reserves, to exchange that for CBDC, so that CBDC would be for interbank use only. Is that the intention?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a very hyper precautionary and banking protective first step to say so. That's and what I also did not understand was that stable coins would or should be issued by the banks.
Yes, that's the intent.
And how much would be the coverage of those stable coins? Would the stable coins issued by the banks, if they were willing to do so instead of using their own bank money, would that be 100% cover, or would that also cover in CBDC only? Or so what would be the use for banks to issue stable coins when they must have 100% cover in CBDC? They wouldn't earn money on that, the banks. They can only earn money on stable coins if they are allowed, say, to design the cover to include a certain percentage of so-called cash equivalents that are interest bearing and that bring some profit and so on. But if they, in my understanding, I can't follow, I have to say.
Well, I think you've answered my question.
Well, no, I don't know, but thus far, I do not understand why that arrangement would make sense. I would have to look deeper into that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Maybe I will jump in then. I think that last question was very important in the sense that I think that is the kind of interest in the United States and CBDC that the Fed and the government, Hoover's, not Hoover, President Biden's executive order of a year ago. And so my question for Dr. Hoover, taking over from Niels here, is why do you say, or why are you conceding that CBDCs will not and cannot be implementing full sovereign money reform? Because as the last question reveals, I think, and my understanding in the United States, CBDCs are not defined yet. And they very well are looking at the possibility of it being only bank issued, not being open to the general public, as you have advocated and people have before, to have access to reserves. And to me, if the only reason to look at CBDC is for it to be the moment for us to achieve within your lifetime, Dr. Hoover, and mine, central sovereign money, just money. And if not, if CBDC is going to happen anyhow, and why are you arguing it's an improvement if it's just going to entrench and allow private bank money to continue? Why are we, and it's going to happen, then to me is, why am I not outside gardening instead of being here? Because it's just going to happen, and it's going to leave the private bank money system continuing and entrench their power further in a dying planet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I fully understand what you are saying. Actually, I fully understand what you're saying. And I remember a debate at Positive Money London when I said something very, very similar to what you have been saying right now. But over the last years, as that development of CBDCs continued, and I had to say to myself that, what can we achieve? So right from the beginning, right away, introducing CBDC as a retail means of payment for everyone and doing away with bank money at the same time. That is, of course, something I can support as an idea, as a program. But today, I think that is not going to happen. It's not realistic, because there are, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, too many vested interests, too many mighty vested interests, and too many old paradigms in the heads and so on. So that will not happen. And of course, at the beginning already, so there is that conflict between the two types of money, between public and private, the sovereign and private money. And so we have the debates on restrictions, limits on the availability of CBDC for everyone, and restrictions on the usability of CBDC, or as you said in your statement, the conflict. Should we have, at the beginning, should we only have a wholesale CBDC as a wholesale means of payment, which means interbank and also including a number of very large non-bank financial institutions? Or should it be, right from the beginning, right away, should it be a retail means of payment for everyone and so on? That is where the conflict starts. Mm-hmm. And that's the way I see it. And rather than saying, yeah, full sovereign money reform, I don't expect it to happen in my lifetime. So let me go outside in the garden and enjoy fresh air and so on. It's an option, but well, so for the time being, I really think CBDC can be, not necessarily, but it can be a door opener for, yes, for more far-reaching monetary reform.
Right. I respect that. And, but I think the vested power interests that you reference don't have to do any work if we are not there advocating for sovereign money reform, just money reform in the process of transitioning to central bank digital currency. And if we're not there saying that, it's going to be worse. I think it's going to be worse, not better. And I can't justify it to so many other people who anyhow, I'll stop talking there. There are other people on the list, and Samuel and Dr. Huber, we're going to give the last word to here. But please, obviously, many of you had questions, and we will try to gather again for more open forum time, as well as a second presentation, because I know I didn't get it the first time, Dr. Huber, but it was very, very good. Thank you.
We can also save the questions from the chat and yeah, try to answer them later on if it's possible for us. And yeah, many thanks to all of you for coming here and asking all questions, and especially thank you to you, Joseph Huber, for doing this. And yeah, it was a really nice evening together here. And I just want to finish with a quote. And I'm quite optimistic about the future. I think that CBDC, it may be a door opener, as you say, Joseph. If only we, the people all around the world, organize and argue for the right balance here. I mean, so we can just push it further and further. I mean, more CBDC, less bank money, no restrictions on the CBDC. When we are there, it becomes more easy to raise the question, how should the CBDC be issued? Should it be just the credit channel, or can we also issue it directly to the people or to the governance budget and like that? So I think it will become more and more easy. The longer on this road we travel, it will be more and more easy for us to argue for pushing the debate in this direction. So I'm quite optimistic here. And just to finish with a short quote here from Abraham Lincoln. The privilege of creating and issuing money is not only the supreme prerogative, I cannot pronounce that correctly, of the government, but it is the government's greatest creative opportunity. By the adoption of these principles, the taxpayers will be saved immense sums of interest, discounts, and exchanges. The people can and will be furnished with a currency as safe as their own government. Money will cease to be the master and become the servant of humanity. Democracy will rise superior to the money power. So with that words, if you want to comment on something, Joseph, or say some last words.
No, not at all. Of course. Yeah, no, that's been a perfect last word. I want simply to add that Abraham Lincoln, following his conviction, he was the one who created, so to say, who introduced the famous greenback. He introduced, by state fiat, by government fiat, he introduced treasury dollars, the famous greenbacks. And the US Treasury continued issuing dollars until, I think, until the 70s of declining extent. But that was really the realization of monetary sovereignty in the United States at the time. And it was later on when in America, the international bankers created the Federal Reserve as a private institution, when that tradition was the beginning of the end of that tradition. So yours was the perfect last word. I had my last word. Thank you very much. I enjoyed very much this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.